can I do two pieces of advice?
Go ahead. Break the rule.
One,
Why not?
I mean, the first one is to miss my mistake, right? Where like I definitely would make sure that you have a technical co-founder ready to go that is completely and totally in it with you. Um, but then I also think like the other side of that is to just take it one day at a time.
Hmm.
Um, like the hardest things that I've ever done, um, yeah, like you get through them by just waking up and then making the determination every morning that you're going to have a successful day. And then if you can do that, then over time that makes your journey successful, and you get to the point. So it's really just about like waking up every day and showing up.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, John Lahtinen. And John started out his journey going to high school, getting involved with a lot of things, thinking he'd go off and be a doctor. So went to college and did some pre-med classes. And decided he didn't want to be a doctor, so switched over to political science and worked in the DC area for a period of time, and then went off to law school. After about a semester of law school, he decided that he didn't want to be a lawyer either, so switched and decided to do a master's degree in finance, and did end up finishing the law degree. Worked for a financial firm for a few years, and then worked for an ancestral DNA firm or company, and an investment firm, and then got recruited over to a startup and started getting into that life. And that management changed direction, ended up having a layoff, and then decided to go in a different direction and pursue where he's at today. So, with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, John.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
Hey, excited to have you on. So, well, I just took a much longer journey and condensed it into the 30-second version of it. So, why don't we rewind and unpack a little bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in high school, thinking you're going to be a doctor?
Yeah. So, growing up, I looked around, all the people that were around me, and the most successful people were just doctors and lawyers. And my dad was a doctor, and my brother was doing pre-med, and he is actually a doctor now. So I thought I would join the family business, and then like set up my whole future to be able to do that. And then one semester into my pre-med classes in college, and realized that I really hated that and did not want to do that at all. And so then kind of just started looking from there on to other things that would be interesting to me. And I in high school actually got involved in debate, and so I kind of got interested in government, and I did mock trial and stuff like that, and so started looking into more political science, legal stuff. Officially switched over to political science, and then minored in business because it's always good to understand how businesses work, right? And I ended up doing that, and then studying political science, and I even ended up working on Capitol Hill for about 6 months as an intern. And then like I got a return offer to go back to the Hill after my internship, and the paycheck was like $33,000 living in DC, and that life seemed a little tough. And yeah, and people that do that, I have a ton of respect for, but you really have to be in love with the governmental grind, and just love being close to power to really like get the full value of that. And so I decided I didn't want to pursue going into government. And so if you have a political science degree and you don't go work in government, then you go to law school. So I went to law school. And about after another semester there, thematic for me is figuring out a lot of things that I didn't want to do. But so I went to law school and went a, for about a semester, and then realized that I definitely did not want to be a litigator. Yeah, it's pretty tough and tedious work, and you really have to love the minutia of it. And I did not love the minutia of it. So then I started looking for other ways that I could leverage, you know, a law degree into different things. And I ended up adding a master's in finance while I was there, and did those degrees concurrently, which was a pretty dumb but and harrowing experience, but gave me a lot of insight, being able to see things from several directions. And I think the biggest thing that I learned there was like how to learn and how to think about problems in a different way.
And just one quick or follow-up question to that. So if you
Yeah.
got into a semester in the law school and you figured out you didn't want to be a lawyer, what was the intent of going or finishing up and getting the law degree? Because been through that myself, and a lot of time, money, and effort to go through that. And so how did you did it fit into your plan, or was it kind of, hey, I'm already here, might as well just keep going, or kind of how did you decide what you're going to do there?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't entirely sure that I didn't want to be any type of lawyer. So I kind of like had explored a little bit of doing securities law, and then eventually decided against that also. Uh, but yeah, I did like contracts more than I liked the deep litigation, everyday research sort of side of legal.
Gotcha.
So, I didn't completely shelve the entire thing right off the bat, but yeah, no, in hindsight, maybe it wasn't the smartest idea, but it definitely taught me a lot about grit and learning in a different way, and thinking about problems on a deeper and, yeah, differentiated level.
Sounds
So
like it was a good educational experience, and gave you some
yeah.
maybe some background for things yet to come. So you did go and you got the master's degree in finance. You finished the law degree. You're coming out, and then I think you went and worked for a financial firm for a period of time. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's actually while I was in law school, I got an internship at a firm called University Growth Fund, and they are a venture capital firm that does growth stage investing, and they have three full-time people, and then the rest are students. And so, and yeah, I mean, I don't know how many students they are now, but while I was there, it was probably, they range between like 30 and 50 students that ran all of the diligence for all of the VC investing that they were doing. So it's a really cool experience that I got to get really, in-depth diligence experience at a firm that was investing, we're writing $500K to $1.5 million checks. So like actual, money, which is an interesting, cool thing that they allow students to write those sizes of checks into real companies. And so yeah, that was cool. I was there, and then I kind of started looking past that into, well, eventually I wanted to get paid doing something, right? And so I started looking into different things that I could do, and had a conversation with one of my former professors at the law school, and he was the president of Ancestry DNA. So he got recruited and started the DNA section of Ancestry.com from scratch, and ran the whole thing. He'd been there for like 9 or 10 years, something like that. And yeah, so I was just looking for what I should do. And he was like, I actually have, I had a bunch of different options, and I kind of was weighing them with him. And he told me, and I was like, what do you think I should do? And he's like, I think you should turn all of those down and come work for me. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So yeah, this really interesting opportunity where he had they were building like a health product with a bunch of DNA gene stuff, and they needed somebody to come in and do corporate development. And they had hired somebody, but through some, like some NDA and non-compete stuff, the new person couldn't start for like 6 to 8 months. And so they needed somebody that could come in right then and then be able to fill that role and kind of be a VP-esque role of corporate development and build out a bunch of the back end, research and negotiate deals and do all of that. But then also be comfortable handing the reins over to somebody else. And so he's like, I think that you have enough like determination and understanding of how these sorts of things work. But I also think that you know that you're underqualified for this and would be willing to give up the role. And so it was a really cool experience for me that I got to go in and make a lot of mistakes and do something that I was wholly unqualified for, and really like understand the strategic corporate development world a little bit more.
No, it sounds like it was a great opportunity and worked out well, and then give you a good start on things. So now from there, I think, or how long did you just stay at the Ancestry and Ancestry.com, that position?
Yeah, so I was there for again, like I just waited until the new guy came on, and then I handed everything off and said, "All right, thanks." And so yeah, it was like 6 months or 6 to 8 months, something like that.
So now you do that for 6 to 8 months, get some experience. Now I can't remember. Is it from there? Did you go and work in an investment firm, or was it working or getting recruited to the startup? Or kind of walk us through
Yeah.
after you wrapped that up and handed it off, kind of where you went next.
Yeah, so then I went back to University Growth Fund actually, and so they were kind enough to take me back, and they gave me a promotion, and I ended up staying there through. I got admitted to the bar, and then kind of toyed with the idea slightly of being a securities lawyer again, because I wasn't still sure what I wanted to do. And then while I was at University Growth Fund for the second time, we started looking at investing in a company, and so I got introduced to their VP of finance at this tech company called Route, and and they were raising a Series B, and looking to become a unicorn, and they didn't have anybody on staff there that had ever raised growth fund or growth stage funding, and so they were kind of confused as to what diligence materials you'd need and how to build them and for them to make sense for investors and everything like that. And so they brought me on to kind of help run that process and get all of the diligence materials in order. And then, we were able to secure a really good chunk of funding, and we were valued at 1.25 billion. And and then I transitioned into more of an operator FP&A kind of budgeting role, which was a little bit out of my wheelhouse and not what I was incredibly interested in. But you at a startup, you just kind of wear whatever hats are handed your way, and so I got a lot of interesting operational experience from that, and stayed there for a while. Route at the time was just like an absolute rocket ship, and we were growing like 100% year over year, even as a $1 billion company. And it was like, revenue was just blowing up. Things were going crazy. And then, we started looking at doing more corporate development, like strategic partnerships sort of deals. And I got to lead out all of the diligence work on that. And that was like pretty fun also. And then, and then the market started to turn, and then crap hit the fan. And so, in finance, you are both blessed and cursed with the knowledge of when layoffs are going to happen. And so you can see the writing on the wall, and, people don't always listen to the finance people when, we're like, we might have a problem here if things don't work out exactly how we think they're going to. And then they don't work out exactly how they think they're going to, and then we got a problem.
So now you go through this, you say, oh, it was a good position, a lot of opportunity, had a good fun, took some companies, and they get some pretty good traction and success. Economy changes, management changes, things go in a different direction, see layoffs are coming. So with all that said, I think that you got laid off, if I remember right. Don't want to put words in your mouth.
We can talk about that. So I mean, yes and no. So basically what happened is that I and one of my coworkers that was on my finance team he's like kind of our data guy. He and I were asked to do all the analysis on doing our first round of layoffs. And so we started looking at everything and figuring out, okay, this really sucks. How do we decide who gets laid off? What's the most fair way that we can do this? What's the way that we can do this in the most efficient way that puts us in the best position? And so, we started trying to look at doing, an ROI based, like, all right, are these employees actually producing value? Which for sales is actually like, it's pretty easy. Like either the salespeople are selling or they're not, and then you can track how much you're paying them. And so then it's a really easy calculation to be like, yeah, they're bringing in money or they're not bringing enough money. But when you're looking at a customer success manager or an accountant or a revenue operations analyst, how do you know, right? Or, marketing or any of the other like things that have a bunch of soft skills, like how do you actually know what their value is? And so we started looking into, all right, well, is there a way we can sort of kind of derive a value? Or, engineering is another like really strong one where we're like, well, we could go through and try to like look at their code or something, or like that's going to take way too long. We don't have any system in place to like really be able to differentiate there. And so then it was really sad because, the three things that we had were essentially we had their salary, and then we had performance reviews. And our last performance review cycle, we did them every 6 months, and about 95% of the company got a 3 out of 5 rating, which was like a satisfactory. They're doing great, like they're doing meeting expectations. So we couldn't really differentiate between people there. And then the last thing that we could do is like talk to their managers. But then if you talk to the managers, then everybody knows that you're doing layoffs, and that creates panic. And there's a bunch of negative externalities that happen there. And so, yeah, we just kind of had to rely on salary and general vibes, which is unfortunately how most companies are doing layoffs. And yeah, it was a pretty tough experience because you see a bunch of people on these lists that that you've worked with, and there's not a lot that you can do past that. And so we handed in our best plan and gave that back to the executive team. And then post that experience, the other guy in my team, his name's Spencer. He's now my co-founder, but he and I started talking about, well, if we were going to do this in the best possible way, like how would we do it? And we decided like, well, we'd really want an ROI. And then we kind of looked at, well, what data do we need to be able to like generate that for non-sales employees? And we kind of brainstormed and whiteboarded and figured out that like, I think that there's about 7 different pieces of data that we could collect. And then we started looking at, is there anybody that's already doing that? And couldn't find anybody. And then really quickly realized also, well, yeah. And then we started like doing some, like talking to some HR people and being like, what do you guys think about this? And then really quickly realized that the data that you need to be able to make layoffs, to do layoffs really well, is the same data that you need to differentiate between any employees, which is the data that you should be using to do promotions and raises. And if you have to, and new hires and any strategic initiative or anything that you're running, like you should have a really good understanding of how good your employees are. And at Route and at other companies that we looked into, the majority of decisions are just being made by middle managers who say, hey, I have this need, or hey, I really like this person. And that's about it. Right. So yeah.
Now, so you set out and said, okay, we're going to figure out how to or fire people. That not just fire people, but also promotions and salaries and who to hire, who to keep, how to keep them, and kind of solving that problem of both sides of the equation, right? Who makes sense to incentivize to stay, and how do you keep them to stay, and who makes sense that probably isn't a good situation and they should explore something else. And so started the business. Now, how long ago did you kind of spin that off, or you and your co-founder start to pursue that?
Yeah, so it was actually right before our layoff plan got introduced. I decided that I wanted to do that. I had kind of been itching to try an entrepreneurial thing myself. I think part of that also was looking at Route and other companies, and then like really getting in the weeds and doing analysis and like presenting things and realizing that startup founders are normal people, right? Like they're not all like these super geniuses. Like they're smart people that work hard and have a good idea and want to pursue it. And so I was like, I feel like I'm smart enough that and willing to work hard, and hopefully get a little lucky and try to do that. And so yeah, we started the company a year and a few months ago. And yeah.
So now walk us through, how's it gone? Is it take off and it's already a unicorn? It's teetering on the verge of bankruptcy or somewhere in between? Walk us through a little bit how that first year's gone for you.
Right. So yeah, like there's a huge learning curve to starting a company, especially a tech company. Like we felt pretty strong about like understanding how the data set and everything would work on the back end. But the front end has been a challenge. And then, so yeah, it took the first few months and just kind of designed everything in Figma, and then started looking at like either getting like a third co-founder CTO, or trying to like just bootstrap and hire it out or shop it out to a dev shop or something. And eventually kind of settled in between, where we just posted an ad on LinkedIn, and then got a guy that wanted to do that, like something part-time on a contract. And so we put him on a contract, and with the intent that he would come on full-time later. And so then once we closed some money, and so we started we got an MVP up, and then it's been a little bit slower than you always hope as a startup founder. And then started doing the fundraise thing. And then in the middle of fundraising, he told us that he wasn't going to come on full time. So then we had to find somebody else that would come on full time. And so then we had to reopen a recruiting process. And then it turns out that this is also probably the worst time to try to raise money in the history of venture capital. So but like one of the frustrating things has been like going to VCs that were like, man, if you would have come to us a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, then like it would have been a no-brainer. But people are just holding on to capital right now. And so we have been somewhat successful in getting some money in committed and everything. But still always in the fundraising process. And then just working on iterating the product. We have 4 companies onboarded now, which is great. I guess like the whole dev process took longer than we thought, because we thought we were gonna be able to raise sooner than we have. But it's just like the startup problems and being gritty, and then focusing on product first, and just kind of focusing in on that, and getting some great advisors that have been extremely helpful.
Awesome. Well, sounds like they're in the thick of the normal startup, which is it always is harder, takes longer, and is more expensive than you anticipate. So definitely wish you good luck in continuing along that part of the journey. So with that, now as we have reached the present day of the journey, it's always a good time to transition to the 2 questions I like to ask or at the end of each episode. So with that, the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
I mean, hindsight 2020, obviously, but when we were toying with getting a full-time CTO, I feel like that would have actually made a huge difference. Because we didn't anticipate having to bootstrap for as long as we have, and then bootstrapping gets pretty expensive when you don't have somebody that can just full-time work on iterating the product. And so we can do as much as we can and tee it up and write all the PRDs and do everything with Figma. But I feel like that would be the number one thing that I would have changed in hindsight, is getting a full-time CTO co-founder right at the start. But I mean, that said, like the amount of equity that we've given up is to be able to get a product on the ground, has been like, that's the trade-off, is the stress versus the equity, I guess.
It is always a trade-off and never an easy decision, but sounds like a good mistake to learn from, and something to keep in mind in the future. So, second question now that I'd like to ask you. So now, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Yeah, I think, can I do two pieces of advice?
Go ahead, break the rule.
One,
Why not?
I mean, the first one is to miss my mistake, right? Where like, I definitely would make sure that you have a technical co-founder ready to go that is completely and totally in it with you. But then I also think, like, the other side of that is to just take it one day at a time. Like, the hardest things that I've ever done, yeah, like, you get through them by just waking up and then making the determination every morning that you're going to have a successful day. And then if you can do that, then, over time, that makes your journey successful, and you get to the point. So it's really just about, like, waking up every day and showing up. And I feel like a lot of times you get a little overwhelmed looking at all the things that you have to do, especially as an early stage entrepreneur. And, you have to be a product manager and a finance manager and like a customer service rep and literally everything. But yeah, no, I think avoiding getting overwhelmed is one of the, by just compartmentalizing into smaller chunks what you need to do just today, and then you can figure out tomorrow what you need to do tomorrow.
That's some great piece of advice, some great takeaway, and some good words of wisdom. So awesome. Well, with that, now as we do wrap up towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
John@pagopeople.com.
Awesome. Simple and easy as that. So definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, John, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure they click share, subscribe, leave us a review. It helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else for your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, John, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Awesome. Thank you so much.